might ask to alert.
This is not.
Cold and flu season. Oh, good. It's cold and flu season, so please take care of yourselves. But I'm also in a wedding in a couple of weeks, so I'm just being extremely careful. And so again, if you're hard of hearing like I am, and you can't hear me because of the mask, feel free to just let me know and I will project better where and when I can. So it's good to be with everyone. Looking forward to today's meeting. I guess I just wanted to be able to turn to Melissa and do roll call at this point.
All right, great. Let's see if I can find the roll call on my screen here. Nope.
And do we have a count? Are we able to see how many folks are online?
I wonder if I stop sharing, if that shows that. Let's see. Does that show everyone? It will slowly populate. Look at that. It looks like we don't see everyone though, because Cord is here. Maybe that is everyone. Oh, and Jeff. Let's admit
Is it
Jeff.
like a gallery view you do?
I wonder if this is the gallery view, but there's an arrow.
Smart screen, so fancy and like working.
I have never used it before, so patience with that.
There's
So
a setting
fancy,
where you
Melissa.
can only see people whose monitors are turned on,
Oh, right.
so that might be what's
Is that
happening.
Cord?
Okay, right, because Cord's
Yeah.
waiting to join. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I am ready for roll
There he
call.
is.
You
There
ready?
he is. All right, we're ready for roll call.
All right, Zan Ojero
Present, good morning.
and Eric Cardella,
Present, in
Pa-
person. Good.
Parisa Chanrami,
Present by video.
Janine Hartley,
Present.
Celeste Jansen,
Present.
Robin Johnson,
Present.
Andy Leonard, Tabidi Lewis, Adrian Livingston, Christina McMahon,
Present.
Maricela Ortega Guzman, Jeff Parker,
Present for 30 minutes.
Very good.
Molly Rogers,
I'm here.
Diana Rojas, Andy Santana May, Karen Spencer,
Present.
Janelle Theobald, Liz Thorne,
Here.
Koi Vu, Kiwi Wilson. Maricela and Janelle, awesome, thank you. I will update you with a count, Robin, soon.
Okay. Hopefully we'll have quorum.
Right.
Do you want me to do the reminder to attendees or?
That'd be great if you could while I'm adding this.
Not a problem. So folks, if everyone can remember to say your name when you're speaking up to share or you have something to say. Even if you just previously said it and then someone else spoke, if you could say your name again. I think we all heard, but I'll just say it again, the meeting is being recorded. And since this is a formal advisory meeting of the state, if you're a member of the public, welcome. I just wanted to let you know there's a public comment section at the end of the meeting, so we do have time on the agenda for you. If you would like to comment or have something that you would like to say, just let Melissa know and she'll make sure that we keep track and have time set aside for you all for sure, even though again, it is an agenda item, sometimes it doesn't get used.
Robin, this is Melissa, may I add one thing?
Yes,
Since this is our first hybrid meeting, if the folks who are attending virtually can raise your hands, we want you to have as much opportunity to speak out as everyone who's in the room here. So we'll be keeping an eye on the screen, trying to do that for raised hands. Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. I think this is the beauty of trying out new things, right? So we're gonna stretch ourselves a little bit. So we're gonna do a quick review of the agenda. We'll be having the Equity and Disparity Committee updates, Youth Development Oregon updates, going through Grantee Spotlight, very excited for that. And then of course, legislative and policy updates. We'll have a break. We'll get back together around youth grant updates. We'll have a working lunch. It's only about 15 minutes long. I'm very food driven, so we might see my energy shift at that point. We have a state advisory group and juvenile justice committee update, another Grantee Spotlight. I love these. Committee report outs. And then we'll, again, as I mentioned before, we'll have time for the public comment. And then we'll have a YDC meeting round up and discussion, and then we'll adjourn at 1 p.m. today. Any questions about the agenda? Any questions about kind of hybrid format?
I think our lunch break is really to like grab the food and bring it back, and we
Yep.
can all just keep going from here.
That sounds great. All right. Well, let's open it up for the Equity and Disparity Committee update.
All right. Thank you. Jared, can everybody see Jared on the screen? He's waving. There he is. He's like I'm in the
He's
corner
on
of
the
the screen.
side.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, welcome everybody. So yeah, we have a quick Equity and Disparity Committee update for you all today. I think we have a few folks here from the Equity and Disparity Committee, it looks like. So is it all right if I start off and just kind of give a little background and context to what we've been doing, and then I can turn it over to anyone if they want to add comments. But we do have a motion today for the group. So the Equity and Disparity Committee, as you recall, has been meeting for about the last 6 months or so, monthly, to develop a few things. And those few things are what we're bringing to the committee today, or to council today, for a motion to adopt. One is an equity statement. And so at the last couple meetings, I think we've presented drafts of an equity statement and a purpose statement for the Equity and Disparity Committee. So if you look, it's the last few pages of your packet. There's a document called Youth Development Oregon Equity Lens Toolkit. And that gives some background. This was sent out a couple of days ago, but if you didn't have time to peruse that, we've got some background there about what the committee has been doing. And then we have an equity statement there, which really is just describing what the role of YDO and the council and the staff is in disrupting inequities and disparities. We also have this equity lens, kind of an equity filter toolkit, which really is a series of questions that was based off the Oregon Education Investment Board. In 2011, it provided a series of questions for an equity lens and equity filter, and so we've developed those really to be more responsive to the youth that we serve. So we kind of amended those. You see these 6 equity filter questions, and this is really something that we can use as a council and as a division in decisions that we make going forward, just making sure that we are keeping equity at the forefront of our decision making. So that really is that equity lens. And then if you go to the next document, you have a land acknowledgement toolkit. And so the background here is that we've received some feedback from various tribes across the state. Some tribes like land acknowledgements and some are not so thrilled about land acknowledgements. And so there's been some discussion at the state level over the last several months about whether land acknowledgements are appropriate or whether they should be revised in some way. And so we thought to be more responsive to, again, the communities we serve, we kind of provided some guidance here. And it's, again, sort of a toolkit for various settings and various meetings of what a land acknowledgement might look like. So we have this guidance here that if we are meeting with a tribe or on tribal land, that we would defer to the hosts of those meetings to just see what they would like to do and defer to them. We also have, in number 2, we have what we've developed is a statement of commitments. So we have these 4 statements of commitment, really. And so in settings where it might not seem appropriate to do a land acknowledgement, but we still want to talk about what our commitments are to the communities we serve, we have these statements. And so we thought, instead of a land acknowledgement, if it doesn't feel quite right to do a land acknowledgement, we could just state these statements of commitment. And this is sort of general to tribes, to marginalized communities, to all the communities that we serve. And then we also have number 3, if we are using a land acknowledgement, we have sort of an official statement that was provided by the Legislative Commission on Indian Services, sort of shortened a little bit. And so these are things that we could drop in a chat if we're doing a virtual meeting. These are things we could state in person. But again, it's various options for what feels appropriate. So anyway, the committee recognizes that this is sort of fluid and might change, and there might be some need for revision. And but yes, so I could turn it over to any members of the committee who might want to elaborate a little bit on the work that has been done. And then there is a motion that we have on the slide somewhere, we can go to
What slide do you have?
slide 25.
While you all are looking at the slide, I'll just add as someone on the committee, the reason we went with the kind of toolkit format where we start with deference to whatever community we would be with, to the statements and commitments we would, is to give ourselves some flexibility, to be able to be responsive to what communities are needing, but also our commitment to Indigenous communities. And that as a part of being responsive to Indigenous communities, recognizing they/we are not a monolith, and that to be responsive in those moments, and by giving us kind of a toolkit with guidance without it being like you do this and you don't do that in an overly black and white format. That was the intention with what you're seeing put before you now. I see we have a hand raised.
Yeah. Commissioner Ojero.
Thank you. I would like to just acknowledge the subcommittee's work and staff work. We worked on both of these elements that we have before you today over a period of probably 3 or 4 subcommittee meetings, and had a lot of really good discussion. I'm comfortable with both of these toolkits. I think both were a struggle in different ways. The land acknowledgement, the main thing we wanted to do is avoid being performative and perfunctory, and that kind of statement becomes even more tokenizing, I think, and marginalizing than not saying anything. So I think we've struck that balance here, and I appreciate the flexibility. In the equity lens, I'm actually really excited about this tool. It's the best equity lens I've seen. It is one that is very specific to the work that we do, and I really appreciate the implementation component at the end that specifies when the equity lens will be used, during which of our processes as YDD and YDC. I will note that the numbering is kind of weird on that. It starts over halfway through, but I really strongly support the work that the committee has done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Question?
Yeah, so Eric Cardella. I just echo what Commissioner Ojero said. Thanks to the committee and staff for the work on this. My question, I guess it's an observation with a question. My recollection when we were doing a significant amount of strategic planning work, however many years ago that was, COVID time, 3 years ago, we really did emphasize one of our commitments was a commitment to anti-racism. And my observation is that the change from racial and ethnic disparities to, equity and disparity. If that was a strategic decision, I mean, I believe that the equity lens and the statements that are in here are absolutely applicable. I want to just put out there, I think we really did want to emphasize as a committee our commitment to addressing racial disparities, and I want to make sure that that is still a strong priority for us. So if anybody from the committee would maybe share whether that was an intentional rebrand of the name of the committee or this work or not.
Great question. I think in the naming of the committee, we kind of went with a general name, equity and disparity. Just maybe there's a shorthand there or something that felt kind of like a quick naming of the committee. And I think, and again, welcome other council member perspective, I think that the tools and the questions do focus in on this point around racial and ethnic disparities and racial equity.
Disproportionality.
Yeah, disproportionality, predictability, disparity, right? Those are the kind of key features. The anti-racism point is also an interesting one. I don't know that we intentionally sort of took that out or not. But my having sort of attended each of the committee meetings and working with staff is, I think we've maintained that that spirit, Eric. Now, but that's great feedback, and I'll say very quickly, one other thing is that we didn't want to get into this space, given time and limited, availability of some people, like into the wordsmithing. And we've given this to you on hard copy so that if you did see something that you've got a pen, you could leave us a couple of pages. And so that's a minor point, I think, to your broader point, Eric, which is that which I think I've answered around, I think that there was some shorthand in the naming of the committee, and I think the spirit of what you're talking about, I hope, was certainly a part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I completely appreciate the statements, and I think that they underscore everything that we've talked about and I guess my comment for the record is, I want to make sure that this council continues to focus on, anti-racism and we talked in I'll open it up to the strategic planning members who are part of that work. We talked about actively combating anti-Blackness as well, and what the role of this committee and council can be. So, yes, I appreciate the work that was done, and thanks for answering my question.
Other questions?
It looks like Zan's hand is up, but I can't tell if it's still up for if it's.
No, I raised it again.
Awesome.
I just wanted to comment that the name of the committee was not something that we as a committee ever discussed. So it was, as Brian said, a shorthand to get the work going. It's interesting, the comments about anti-racism and anti-Blackness and the fact that we didn't include them anywhere explicitly in our equity statement or background. I think it just reflects a little bit of a disconnect between those of us that actually showed up and did the work in the committee and the folks that were involved in the strategic planning at depth previously. And we weren't necessarily the same people around the table. So that's a valid point, and I think that it deserves further consideration from the whole body.
Thanks, Anne.
Question, this is Liz Thorne. It's more of an implementation question, looking at the numbers 1 through 6 on the last page, I guess. And not looking for an answer right here, but I'm super eager to see this put into practice. And so my curiosity and wondering is, what will that look like? Like when it's integrated into the development of RFAs and opportunities for funding, when it's integrated into legislative initiatives, is that, I guess that's just something that I'm eager for this group and staff to consider. Like, what does that look like? How are they, is there like a criteria when we're going through a legislative adoption, like whatever that looks like? I think that's always where this gets really hard. And so I'm just super eager for that implementation conversation.
Yes.
And I guess I do have a question. Has there been discussion about what that will look like yet, or is that just step 1, get it on paper, step 2, put it into practice?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Get it passed,
Yep.
and then let's start moving.
Perfect.
And I will say too, I think our team, our staff, myself, ask ourselves some of these questions as maybe informally, as we have conversations around policy and RFAs and so on, but this will formalize it.
Yeah, great.
So is the motion to
Yeah, is it
accept these documents?
Yes.
Can we put the motion up on the screen or no?
You said it's, I don't know.
Slide 25.
I'm
sorry.
I don't think I have the slide deck that you're talking about.
Oh.
Is it the March 9 YDC grants update?
Yes.
Oh, I had that open, but I didn't see slide.
I'm sorry, it's 29.
All right.
And that's actually, I'll just make a comment as well, just to respond to Eric, in the equity statement, there is just one phrase there, prioritizing anti-racism. Just to, just to call that out too.
Great.
All right,
I see it.
there we go, thank you.
You can see a lot more than just that slide, but we're gonna go with that for right now. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm a little.
I I appreciate that, and I had seen that as well, and I think Liz actually was more eloquent in saying just, how, that's maybe what the next move is, so I appreciate the conversation.
So yeah, that is the recommended action. I don't know if we have a committee member who would like to officially propose that.
Yep, I could put a motion on the floor. So I put a motion to adopt the equity statement, equity filter toolkit, and land acknowledgement toolkit as presented to the council on this March 9th, 2023 meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Great.
Eric, did you second the emotion?
I did, I second that. I like that emotion.
So ready for the votes?
Yes, let's
Okay.
go ahead and take a vote.
Zan Ojro,
Yes.
Eric Cardella,
Aye.
Parasa Chanrami,
Aye.
Janine Hartley,
Aye.
Celeste Jansen,
Aye.
Robin Johnson,
Aye.
Andy Leonard, Tabidi Lewis, Adrian Livingston, Christina McMahon,
Aye.
Maricela Ortega Guzman,
Aye.
Jeff Parker,
Jeff Parker votes aye.
thank you, Molly Rogers,
Yes.
Diana Rojas, Andy Santana May, Karen Spencer,
Aye.
Janelle Theobald,
Aye.
Liz Thorne,
Yes.
Koi Vu, Kiwi Wilson. 5, 6. That is 14 votes and we need minimum 13. Okay.
So we cut.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for the votes and the discussion. I'm gonna shift gears here and we're gonna go to an update from Brian.
Yeah, I think I think we might, what time are we at?
10:30, I think we're on schedule.
Are we on schedule? Although I was thinking I'd move my update, Melissa, actually into the spot of that committee update, like toward the end at noon. So
Okay.
I wanna switch us to either, I think the Grantee Spotlight. We'll get to my update later. I'm trying to get to some of the voting items. I know we're gonna lose Jeff. But he's probably gone by now, because he's only got 1 minute. But that will still maintain quorum, and then we'll go to the legislative policy piece that has a vote. So I think Grantee Spotlight makes sense, and then we'll come back to the general update like around noon.
And is that the slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that work, Paul?
That works. That's fine.
Yeah, it's not somebody.
No, Christine's should be on the call, I believe.
Yes.
So Christine, if you wanna, hey, there you are. Hi.
Share my screen.
All right. And do I need to move or am I picking up on camera?
Yeah, actually, you're.
We can actually see you.
Oh, hey, there you are. All right. So Brian and I have been having this conversation coming out of the community conversations that we really wanted to start trying to bring back the grantee highlights. And so that's our attempt, and we're bringing that back. We have a couple ideas that you'll see today that we're kind of working on it. But I want to turn it over to Jared to introduce Christine Otto from MSD.
Great, thank you. All right, so yeah, it is my pleasure to introduce Christine Otto from Multnomah ESD. So Multnomah ESD currently has a re-engagement opportunity grant and a re-engagement collaborative grant from us. And so I've had the pleasure of working with them on those grants over the last biennium. They're doing some really exciting work through the East County Bridges program to connect a lot of the schools, nonprofits, CBOs in East Multnomah County for re-engagement work. So they are getting a lot of youth re-engaged in that area. And several of us went to an event last Friday. There was a large outreach event in East County that brought together a whole bunch of organizations and had really fun DJ and food and just awesome outreach event to youth in that area. So we were able to see some of that work happening and just a lot of exciting stuff happening with Multnomah ESD in that area. So wanted to turn it over to Christine Otto to talk a little bit more about that program.
And I think we can go back to the screen.
And the work they're doing with that grant. And yeah, I will turn it over to Christine.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting us to this space. If it is okay, I'm going to share a screen. I put together a really quick PowerPoint just for a few visuals. Please forgive some of the graphics are not as perfect as I'd like, but I thought it'd be useful for you to see some of the parts of what we've been doing. So East County Bridges is a collaborative program based out of Multnomah ESD in Multnomah County. Our focus is on reconnecting youth in Multnomah County and building the pathway for our youth together. To do that, we engaged in dialogue prior to receiving the grants. And this dialogue involved all the East County, Multnomah County school districts. That includes Reynolds, David Douglas, Park Rose, Centennial, and Gresham Barlow. And probably, this is pretty historical, all came to the same place and agreed to collaborate and share data. Because the reality for those who are familiar and also are not familiar with East County, if you were to look at where the lines are between different districts, it's kind of nebulous. And kids move around a lot. And yet then that causes disruptions in their education because they're not really sure. Like, I think I'm moving within Park Rose, but no, now I'm in Centennial, or now I'm in David Douglas. So we wanted to eliminate those boundaries. So collectively, we come together to collaborate as a network. We meet monthly. And we are also participating in the shared outreach, which I'll show you some examples in a moment. We agreed to collectively share a database of students so that we can kind of pick up and learn, like, this person is now in Park Rose. That person's in school. Don't need to worry about them in Centennial anymore. We also have some transition specialists, including Adjourn, who is here with me and will be happy to answer questions and engage in dialogue in just a moment, as I just want to share a few highlights of our work. And then we also have East County Bridge outreach. We have a website, Instagram. We are attending pop-up events, and we are now starting to host events, which Jared and Paul, and I think Molly, possibly too, attended last week, which is really exciting. So we are these are just a couple of the things that we're branding, putting out there in terms of if you need to reconnect, if you're looking for a fresh start, we are here to help. So going backwards, I did mention a shared database. Those who work in education might understand just how massively amazing it is that a whole bunch of districts came together and agreed to share information. And so I unfortunately cannot show you the details of it because it does have real live data of students. But we are able to populate it with youth that come through our various referral systems, as well as students coming from our student information system who are no longer enrolled. We also have in there a best fit matrix with a variety of our stakeholder partners where we can filter it and see, okay, so who works with ERCO? Does David Douglas work with ERCO? And so when we're working with youth, we know which services there are contracts and agreements with already to help filter some of that information. We're also starting to do events. So in English and in Spanish and Russian. Also, we now have some Russian support. So we recently had an event that was held in East County. We did marketing at a variety of different locations. This is just a small sampling of a couple of the locations and had a wide variety of partners who attended that, including multiple school districts and community partners. This, I hope, is going to work. We'll see if it does.
We are at the Reconnections event. We have all our partners out. We have our DJ. We have spots to sit and hang out. We have our school programs, our community organizations, lots of free books. Hi.
Okay, I hope you were at least able to see it. I'm not sure you would have heard it.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, okay, there's a little bit more, but that was taken early on in the event from last week. And so just because I wasn't 100% sure if embedding it was going to work for you to see, I did grab a few pictures to share some of the people and the excitement around the event. I do want to highlight that in the center is, you'll see two people with a green background. The one in the white, her name is Sidonia Simpson, and this event would not have happened with her. She is our senior specialist, and she is celebrating her birthday by camping on her way down to San Francisco for a wedding. So not able to be here with us. And Adrian, and who is here, whose picture is not on this screen anywhere, I think, was also instrumental in getting this going and getting all of our partners together. And so that's just kind of a little bit of an overview of what our program is. And then of course we're in an ESC program. So I'm going to stop sharing and open up the opportunity for questions. If you'd like to see any like our website or anything else, by the way, our website is getting a refresh as we speak. So by next week we'll have a new website. So I'm not like really taking you there, but I can if you want to.
Thank you, Christine. I don't know if anybody from the.
Hi, Christine. This is Celeste Jansen. I appreciate you sharing a bit about the work that you're doing, and a shared database is amazing. So that is a very cool accomplishment. Thank you for highlighting that. I'm curious about youth voice, and have heard stories about young people who might walk into one school and say, I dropped out of Park Rose and I really want to enroll in whatever nonprofit, and there being contract limitations. So just because a young person wants to re-engage, if a contract isn't set up right, there still might be challenges. And I know you're working with districts and really trying to do collaborative work to engage kids. And I'm wondering if any of it is getting into kind of, how are you actually setting up contracts with these partners that are re-engaging kids, and are contracts changing, or the way that they're thinking about contracting services? It feels like that's where like a lot of the work might kind of lie. And I didn't know if that's something that you're looking at, or if you've seen some changes in.
I think those are great questions. I hear a couple of questions. So one I heard early on was with regards to youth voice. And I will share that in our development of some of our materials and even our logo, we reached out to kids that we know who are tangentially engaged and community partners as well, to get some of that voice in developing our branding. But the root of your questions, I think, have to do with those youth that are finding it difficult to navigate, and how are their challenges being highlighted, or how are they being minimalized. And it's kind of a couple of part answer. So the first part is that our vision is to eliminate all boundaries to access to education for youth, where they feel like their path, they get to set their path, and it is the right path, and it is helping them meet their goals and be successful in earning that diploma and going on to post-secondary opportunities. Our first big project is making sure we have all our districts aligned. We've also been having some meetings with our community partners, and we've heard that exact same question with regards to contracts. And that has been a specific ask that they've had from us about that. That is a conversation we are having. I would say we are looking at this as a phased approach, which I didn't really highlight in my quick little blurb. And one of those phases is really helping support some of the contracts in a way that gives autonomy to the districts, as well as supports the needs of our community-based organizations and our youth, particularly our youth. You referenced a youth who wasn't happy in one location and wanting to go to an alternative school. That is actually a story that we hear often. One of the stories we've heard, and this is one of the reasons why this work is so important to us, is a kid who might have been to Park Rose or might have been at Reynolds or wherever they were. They show up at Open School East. They show up at the door and say, hey, I want to go here. I have friends here. This seems like a great fit. And Open School East says to them, great, you belong to X school district, let's say Park Rose. You'll need to go to Park Rose to talk to them about getting enrolled, and then they will do a referral. And then Open School East may never hear from the kid again, because what happened is they showed up, they made an effort, and then all these extra barriers started kind of increasing. Maybe they never went to Park Rose before. They don't have any connections. They don't have a car, so transportation, there's all sorts of barriers that come into being. And so we are working to make sure that doesn't continue to happen. And so one of the things I will show you is, this is kind of a two-part piece here. We're working with every single district, and we have some shared information. So we have these for our school districts, but we also have this we're working on these for places like Open School or POIC, et cetera. And effectively they show up and they have questions about how to reconnect, and we have that information for them at Centennial. But then also, if Centennial is not the right location, it gives them information about East County. And then as soon as they reach out to East County, or the school is helping them reach out to East County, Adrian comes into play, or Sedonia comes into play and walks the youth through that process. So they're not navigating it alone in that process. So we have these in each of the schools connected as just an example. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but I think it starts to answer your question.
Yeah, great. Thank you for digging into that. I know it's a really big issue for youth and families.
We probably have room for one other question or comment. It would be interesting also to hear from, I think it's Adrian.
Yeah.
And maybe at least he could introduce himself and say that may be our last comment, frankly, so we can keep on time, but appreciate you showing up.
Christine, we'll turn it back to you.
Okay, I do want to add one more thing, and then I do want Adrian to share a little bit about what he does as a transition specialist, since I sort of heard that as a question. When going back to the contract piece, MESD serves our component districts. Our intent and our hope is that every kid finds the right space at Park Rose or Centennial or David Douglas or Gresham Barlow or Reynolds. We also know that doesn't work for every kid. And so we are also working with our community colleges and other partners to find different pathways for kids if that is the right pathway. So our hope and goal is to get them back in the regular district school, but really it's about what they need. And that is our core focus. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to the person who is the boots on the ground, interacting with youth and helping them find their path. Adrian.
Yeah, hello. I'm Adrian. I've been working with East County Bridges since 1 month ago now. We had this great event last Friday, and I've been calling these youth, but the most interesting part is that I've been talking to the parents, and because they are Spanish speakers, they are telling me more about what are the barriers and what are the priorities or the needs they have, so their youth engage with school. So I'm excited about supporting East County Bridges and working with the community. And also what I notice in everyone, not only Spanish speakers, is that the youth, they don't know what to do or what to say or where to go. And our support it's important for them. Yesterday, I just had a call with a youth, and he was like, I'm interested in going to Impact Northwest. And I was like, oh yeah, let's make a call. And I was like, do you feel okay calling them right now? And he was like, I don't know what to do. Okay, let's call together. Let's do this together. So yeah, we are working directly with youth or parents to navigate with them and supporting them to continue with their path in this in his career or educational way. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Any last comments? I know, Christine, you have to go to another meeting, so thanks for squeezing us in. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you both for being with us.
And just to kind of put a quick recap on that, we have over 9 re-engagement grants in the area. And so they are working to pull those together. Brian and I had an opportunity to also meet with Gresham Barlow on how they're individually supporting this work. And so there's quite a bit of funds coming out with re-engagement. And so we're excited to do that. Jared, did you have any last comments to share?
No, just thank you to the MESD folks. Thank you for the hard work you do, and thank you for being here.
All right, thank you. Moving forward, do we want to go ahead and go to legislative and policy updates with Cord and Brian?
I think, Cord, is there some slide deck or something?
Yes, if we could please have the the main slide deck back. There should be a starting slide for us to launch from.
I think it's right after the MESD, or the Grantee Spotlight, if I remember right.
Right after that.
You probably don't have this in your packet.
Legislative and policy update, I see it. Thanks for your patience. Share that screen. There. How's that?
All right, super, thank you. For the record, Cord Bucher, Deputy Director for Youth Development Division. I'll be presenting with Brian, so I'll get things started and I'll be turning it back over to him at different points. If we could go to the next slide, I'll start this update by talking about the strategic plan. I have this, what we refer to as the placemat. Here, just for reference, we shared this out with everybody at the end of last week. This is a document that we've been using since we started the work on the plan to track some of the key parts of the plan, the overarching goals, and then the constituent strategies. And then over on the right, we're filling up more and more space with the completed objectives, some of the actions that we identified, some actions that have emerged. And since this has already been shared, I'm not going to spend much time on this document, but actually ask that we go to the next slide and just talk about some of the highlights of things that have happened, work that is directly driven by that plan and actions that were identified. I'm going to jump around here as this graphic encourages me to do. So starting up on the top left, I mean, I think the big thing, we're going to talk a lot about it later in this meeting, is improving our grant making processes. And there's a number of ways in the strategic plan. We talked about this from how the council and the division work together on our grant making processes and kind of clarifying our roles within that, to taking input from our community partners and learning how we can make those processes better, more responsive, more accessible. The renewed focus for YDC committee work. The Equity and Disparity Committee was one of several committees that were reorganized or realigned from the previous structure of committees. And that committee in particular was a result of how the strategic plan talked about increasing our equity focus as a council and agency. The cross-agency collaboration piece that popped up in several places is definitely something that I think there's a lot of evidence of. Future Ready Oregon is probably the biggest piece of that. That is legislation that happened last year in the short session that has brought YDD into really close collaboration with the Higher Education Coordinating Commission and Bureau of Labor and Industries around grant making for workforce development. Moving along, honoring tribal sovereignty and grant agreements was one of several ways that the division has sought to implement some of the effort we identified in the plan around improving and strengthening our relationship with tribes and honoring sovereignty. And now that has become kind of a standard within our intergovernmental agreements with tribal nations. The Sovereign Nation Fund is something else that I think we'll mention later on in the meeting, but we're continuing that work and trying to learn how we can be better partners and funders. The alignment of racial and ethnic disparities efforts and the juvenile crime prevention grants, also aligning the Title II federal funds with some of our community investment priorities, really bringing together what were previously seen as two different sides of the agency's work into more alignment. Enhancing community engagement. We've done community engagement, but I think particularly in this last round, like figuring out how we actually implement that input. Certainly around our grant processes, I think there are some changes we have made that are a direct result of us listening in those conversations. And then the last big one is updating our branding and having a clear agency identity. I think that I at least am still getting used to Youth Development Oregon, but I feel like it is something that captures the work of the division and the council in a really neat way, rather than a very long acronym or set of words. So it really captures the mission of youth development here in Oregon that we're all working together on. Next slide, please. So I feel like, we wanted to highlight a lot of the successes that we've had, but also to note that there might be some next steps here. One of those is that in the governor's expectations for state agencies, there is a strategic plan item that we are going to adapt our plan to meet the requirements of the format that the governor's office has requested agency strategic plans in. However, we also see that it's about time for us to revisit and renew our plan. It's been almost exactly 2 years since we started implementing the plan that was developed in 2020 and into 2021. And so one of the things that I think Brian will want to talk with the council about is determining a timeline for what that revisiting of the plan looks like. And I noted just some of the questions that come to my mind when we talk about where we're at and where we want to go, that I'll just leave there on the slide. And then I'd like to invite Brian to maybe speak more on this, if you would please, Brian.
Yeah, a question that I just would love for a quick conversation on is when, should we say in the fall? We have a September meeting. We could use potentially some time then, like maybe we meet for half the day and then we spend the afternoon doing, from 12 or 1 to 4. Or we could actually just select a specific date in, let's say, October or somewhere and actually have like a day long or a day and a half long kind of retreat. So I'm interested in hearing from the council what your thoughts are. And I'll admit, we could do that in September around one of our quarterly meetings, although that's when school begins and it's a kind of a hairy time. So we could also say, oh, well, yeah, Brian, that's an interesting idea. Maybe March, maybe do that. Or not March, there's December, we have a December meeting and then we have a March meeting. So if we do something around a meeting, we might want to not do September because it's busy. But if we just picked a separate date, then we could do that in the fall or early winter. So those are my two questions. Time generally, like what do y'all think about when we should revisit and renew the plan?
Is there a timeline connected to the governor's expectations?
We have to do the governor piece by June 30th, and our thinking there is to adapt our current plan to their format. I don't think there's enough time for us to do a whole review and renew by then. I think we just sort of take what we've got, update and great accomplishments as Cord just described, but then move into the fall or winter for more in-depth planning process.
Brian, you probably said this, the intent would be full council, not a subcommittee at this
Yeah,
point.
I think full council, I think though we could maybe create a work group or some group to maybe help guide the process, Eric, so which is what we did, which
Right,
was
and
happening
we
last time.
engaged an external
Yeah,
facilitator as well.
facilitator, yeah.
So, Robin, every time of year is busy. And so it's okay. I think probably what makes sense is if it's fall in the middle of the biennium, that seems like a reasonable time to kind of think it through and process it and kind of good for the next 2 years. So that feels like an appropriate time. I will share my preference, is that if we do 2 half days close together or centered around a date that we already have a meeting, that makes it a little bit easier in some calendars, but so yeah, that I don't know that there's any month.
There's always something.
Right, springtime budget, fall time school, summertime vacations, wintertime holidays, it just is.
Karen, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I wanted to just take a moment and sort of pat ourselves on the backs on this. When we started the strategic planning process, there was a lot of anxiety around just the plan. Is it going to be stuck in a drawer? Is this another useless exercise? And I apologize, that's one of my alarms going off. I'm sure, Brian, you remember a lot of those conversations. There was a lot of trust building, a lot of work that had to be done just to have the momentum. And as soon as Cord showed the list of completed initiatives, my first thought is, wow, I think we might need to refresh the plan. So I'm very, very excited about this. And we, as human beings, sometimes don't pat ourselves enough on the back for true accomplishments. So I just wanted to take this moment and pause for us to reflect on that.
Awesome, thank you so much for that. Other thoughts or considerations around timing of the next round of strategic planning?
This is Celeste. I remember in past years, occasionally we would have a conversation that would be impactful for granting, but the timeline didn't match up well with the grant timeline. And so we wanted to make a small tweak, but we realized we have to get the RFP out. And so that is just one consideration, is that there might be something internally that we would want to consider on, like, for example, when the RFP for funding goes out, and we might want to back plan accordingly.
Yeah, so, and that's what I'll just say, is in our next presentation, the next discussion, youth grants update, we'll be talking about the RFA. The RFA, just to again, thanks to team, has been released. It was released March 2nd, which was last, whatever, Thursday or something, like among the earliest possible releases, because community and organizations were like, get it out to us early so we can get the time needed to submit and apply, and then we can get our grants in the summer, not in the fall.
Yeah.
Again, I'm stealing the thunder from the grant managers a little bit. I'm proud. So if we do something, say fall or winter, we are then, call it a year and a half ahead of then the next cycle, which, yeah, so which means then we can have plenty of time to sort of think about what that 25 to 27 looks like. Yeah, but better to do that in this, let's call it more or less this calendar year.
Yes.
Then, like, if we say, oh, just do it in 24, then we're the team's already starting to think by the spring, fall of 24 about then the RFA that will come out in early 25. So I think that the timing works well.
Another timing, sorry.
No, please.
I know there are a few of us looking down this aisleway here who are coming up on the end of our term with the council, and I would just put that out in terms of consideration as well. And I would defer to staff to some extent, is if we're going to be recruiting a significant number of new members, we may want to consider whether you want the old folks like me involved in the strategic planning, or the new, or if there's opportunity for both. I mean, I would think if there's new council members coming in with new passions and skill sets, engaging them in the conversation. So I don't know. I mean, I know we don't typically stack the deck where we have new people coming in before the old. I keep saying old. The seasoned council members.
The two-term council members.
Exactly. That are about to go take a long nap. Yeah. So just a consideration there. I mean, it'd be wonderful if we do have strategy around recruitment for new council members to maybe get them engaged. And I would also, a question associated with that is, can we engage non-council members in the strategic planning process? Prospective council members maybe.
If we form a committee, then anyone from the public can be on that committee, so you would definitely be welcome if you're turned out as a council member. I think that works that way.
Are you extending my term?
Sure.
Yeah, and I think the other way would be awesome as well, is potentially some partners, strategic possible council members that maybe could be engaged in strategic planning, just to understand what the culture of YDO is.
Eric, I'll just comment real quick. It's Brian. A great point. I think, and we will talk, that was a part of my update, but we've got some folks who will be turning off. We I think need, we're often hovering very close to quorum. So there's a need for us to spend some energy, for me and us to spend some time in recruitment. And I think that's a really important factor. It's hard to say. That might put us in that like later, I don't know, later in calendar year or early 24 timeframe, once, because I'd love to get what people who are turning off allowed. We even have some folks, Karen and others, right, who are like, okay, I think it's time to move forward, but I'm like, oh wait, hold on until we can find a replacement, please. And we have a new governor, so that's also meant that process is just a little slower. So blah, blah, blah. I think that's a really important factor, and I'd like to kind of time things in such a way that we can have as many new people involved.
A follow-up question, do we have a maximum number of council members by statute, or?
I think there is a max.
Of 33?
Well, we're not there, right? So, I mean, what I'm thinking.
Minimum of 15 and a maximum of 33.
Okay, well, then there's potential that we could start the recruitment process and get some new folks in before we have folks turning out. I think that would be strategically the way to go. I'm also thinking if I were a new council member and my first meeting was a half-day strategic planning, I'd be drinking from the fire hose. It might make sense to start with the recruitment piece.
Yeah.
And maybe a committee, I don't know if there's a logical existing committee that can maybe give some thought to some talent search. I mean, I realize it's the governor's discretion for appointments, but yeah. People first and then strategic planning.
Sorry, I'll hop in, because I should note that the Policy Rules and Research Committee had a brief conversation about this in our last meeting. And my sense from the committee and the chairs, and you may chime in if you think differently, but I got the sense that committee felt like that could be a place to take on some of the work at a committee level, so that, rather than creating a new committee or work group or something, that the Policy Rules and Research Committee could be the place to do that. And of course, any council member could also participate, as well as, as Melissa noted, folks who are not currently council members.
No,
it's okay. I'll wait.
Okay.
Trust me,
Well, I wonder if next steps are for you to put together a proposed timeline. My personal preference would be half days, no full days. But that's me. And so maybe you all can put together a proposed timeline and we can respond to that.
This is Melissa, if we have new members at that time, we could work in the orientation and training as well, possibly, for those new members.
If we do bring in, if we consider inviting outside members, I'm just wondering about, how do we go about a really equitable process to make certain that the awareness is very wide, so that if people aren't involved, we're able to say, here's what we did, like what would that marketing plan look like that we could agree upon as a group, so that there's no blowback as far as, oh, it's just an insider's kind of dynamic, but no, we consistently made this outreach to invite people to participate in the process, or who might, who work in the, in the area of education, right? And so, or youth or what have you. So that I'm just thinking, that way, it would just eliminate that kind of blowback. And I don't know what the marketing plan is for the outreach for new members, but I'd love to have a conversation about what that looks like. That creates some kind of sustainable, it probably is sustainable, but okay.
Is there already a natural committee to hold that conversation that can also pitch the recommendation?
On the recruitment?
Yeah. Like the marketing plan plus process.
I think that historically that has been sort of a rules, there was like this rules committee. I think the executive committee is the place to start that, and these are public meetings, so anybody can come, just to be very clear, right? So, but I think that's probably the place where we can bring the timeline and B, have a deeper conversation. I think we can spend a little time when I do the update later talking about recruitment, but I think we can also bring it to that executive committee table to go deeper.
Okay.
All right, Court, do we have more?
Yes, if we can go back to the slideshow, I'll take us on to the next segment of the presentation, which is the legislative update. Cool, thank you very much. So I will move pretty quickly through this, since I know we may now be starting to get off our timeline for today. So the first thing to update you all on is just the YDD budget and our legislative concept. So the governor's recommended budget generally aligns with the division's current service level funds. So there were no cuts to grant program funding. The administrative or operating costs were slightly lower, but that's not, nothing that's impacting us negatively, just cost savings. The governor's budget also included continuing the Future Ready Oregon program. So of the 10 million we got in the legislation, 7 was federal funding that can be used on an ongoing basis. And we had intended to carry that forward. And the governor's office has included that. We did have a couple of policy option packages or POPs. We requested some general funds to support the Future Ready position, which was denied. Although we understand we can use federal funds from the Future Ready funding for that. And we also requested a position to support the prevention and justice team to work with Anya and that team on grant management and other projects. And that also was denied. So we didn't get any new funding, but we were able to retain the unspent federal dollars for Future Ready. Our budget hearing, Ways and Means, the Joint Committee on Ways and Means Subcommittee on Education, heard from Brian yesterday morning. They got the YDD presentation. We're right now providing responses to some of their questions, particularly a lot of interest and questions around youth disconnection, which we share as one of the drivers of our work and our budget, is the need to reconnect youth with education and career training and opportunities. So we're going to be hearing more about our budget from that committee. The ODE hearings are ongoing. There will be an opportunity for public testimony. The date is not set yet, but it's generally at the end of all the education agency hearings. There are some public hearings when folks can come and testify in person or submit written testimony on the agency's budget, and we'll share information about that once we have it. Our guess was probably the end of March, but the snow a week or so ago caused some delay in the hearings, and there could be other delays. So I think that we'll just have to wait and see, and we'll let you all know when that opportunity comes up. We had a legislative concept we put forward to the governor's office to sponsor for the council and division some statutory updates. And unfortunately, that did not get moved forward. That the governor's office was really focused on a few set initiatives legislatively that align with the governor's priorities, which Brian, you may be talking about that in your update later. And so technical fix bills were not a part of that. There is still a chance that our technical fix could wind up in another bill that relates sufficiently to our work that it could fit in there. But my sense is that it's not going to happen in this session. But that doesn't impact our work negatively. We felt these clarifications, updated language, and would kind of allow for more clarity around what the division does. And we'll see if we have another opportunity to put it forward in the future. I wanted to share information about some of the legislation that the division or council are named in and things that we're watching. There are, of course, other pieces of legislation that might be of interest. If there's something that I have missed here that you want to make sure I'm paying attention to, feel free to shout it out or drop it in the chat. But these are the ones that we're paying close attention to. Senate Bill 48. The original language in this bill restored the penalty for compulsory school attendance violations or truancy. There is an amendment now for the bill that would change it from restoring the penalty to a task force to study truancy and make recommendations. And I believe either the council or division is named as or I think the director or a designee will be put on that task force to do that work if the amendment is adopted and if the bill moves forward. I'll note that none of these bills have yet had work sessions scheduled, and all work sessions have to be scheduled by next Friday, by the 17th. Otherwise, a bill will be dead for the session. So we're watching for work sessions to be scheduled on these bills. Right now, most, if not all of these, except for a couple, have had public hearings. Senate Bill 421 establishes a youth advisory council. This is a slight revision of a bill that has been put forward in the past. That was the Racial Justice and Equity Youth Council, or I may have the acronym jumbled, but folks may be familiar with that. I know we've shared info before. And this Youth Advisory Council would potentially include YDC youth members, and re-engagement program participants are specifically called out to be invited to participate. And the role of the council would be, among other things, to consult with education agencies on how we can do better work. So it would be a really amazing opportunity for youth leadership and youth voice in state government. And we're eager to see what happens with that bill. House Bill 2320 establishes Juvenile Justice Advisory Commission. I know some folks from the council testified and are watching this bill. The 2327 would permit juvenile departments to provide preventative services to youth under 12, but also lower, set a minimum age for adjudication in juvenile court of age 12. House Bill 3305 and 3371 are part of a set of bills that make changes to the Future Ready Oregon statutes. One is modifying the reporting requirements for grant recipients. We feel pretty confident that the reporting that we're rolling out would allow us to fulfill this if it happens. And 3371 just requires that if a youth is participating in a paid work experience, that if there's any costs associated, that is disclosed. So for example, if you're gonna have to buy work boots or clothing, or there's any fees associated with the training, that's put out there up front, and that the service provider covers half of that cost. My experience is that YEDD workforce programs are generally not passing costs on to participants, but we feel confident that if this were to pass, we would have no problem implementing it. And the last bill there, HB 5014, is the ODE budget bill that includes the YDD's budget. And so, of course, we're watching that one. That's what Brian was testifying on. I will stop if anybody wants to ask questions about these, share anything else, mention other bills, or otherwise comment on legislative session.
I'd like to just comment on House Bill 2327. Molly's here. Our Association of the Juvenile Department Directors has been part of a coalition that worked to put that legislation out, and we testified last week, and there was a lot of it. We testified in the Judiciary Committee, and there was our lobbyist said, I have never seen them ask as many questions as they did in this one. So it really is shining a light on the gaps and the gaps in the systems that serve children and youth, but especially the younger kids, that we're just not paying attention to the work we could be doing on the front end to prevent kids from getting into our system. And instead, kids are just getting dumped into the juvenile justice system at very young ages. So for me, it was very encouraging to see that the committee was so interested and asked a lot of really good questions and follow-up questions. So Molly and I are both pretty heavily involved in this. So if anyone needs more information as it continues on, we're happy to answer. I'm speaking for you now, Molly.
Yeah, that's okay.
We're
That's
happy
part
to
of
answer.
the juvenile justice update. I mean, I think is because there may be additional dollars. And actually there was a policy change at the juvenile justice subcommittee. I think Christina, I think you're spot on, to be able to serve youth down to age 8 with those dollars in preparation for this bill. And so we've already done some policy work around it. I also testified on behalf of 2320, just so everyone knows. I didn't testify as a member of the Youth Development Council. I testified as the president of the Oregon Juvenile Directors Association in support of the concept of really focusing on the juvenile justice reform.
Any additional comments or questions?
I was just going to ask, thank you both for sharing that. And Molly, for the council, if 2320 were to move forward and pass, I think one of the questions I might have and others might have is like how the council might interact with that Juvenile Justice Advisory Commission. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. I have thoughts on that.
Are we gonna talk more about
But
that?
let's talk about that in the juvenile justice piece, Corey, because I think there's quite a bit to that.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Well, I will keep us moving. The next slide, if we can get there, is the last piece of this slate of things, which is the updated re-engagement administrative rules adoption. So do we have quorum right now, Melissa?
We do. Thanks for
Wonderful. While we have it, I will quickly just share some background. These rules, the draft rules, were published in December, and I've shared. We shared a document last week with the final rule language with the council. So we did not receive any public comments. The only change from the draft rules that was noted in the document you received is just a minor change for clarity, which we noted in the final rules, just for some consistency when we talk about school, that we talk about high school in the same way in different sections of the rules. That was something we caught as we were working on the RFAs. If there were any questions or comments on the re-engagement rules, be happy to have discussion. But if we go to the next slide, we have our recommendation, which would be for a motion to adopt the rules as presented, the final rules to the council.
Corey, we do have one question in the room, please.
Hi, Court, this is Sam. I was looking at 423-160-0005, letter C, where you listed some child placing agencies and where you list OIA and DHS and so forth, and county juvenile. If it's not too late, can you add Oregon Health Authority? Because Oregon Health Authority also has, placements.
Thank you, Sam. So to answer your question, in order to adopt the rules, I actually don't know whether we can make a change. I would have to defer to someone who may know rules and adoption around adoption of rules. If the council could have a motion to add another recommending agency, and then a separate motion to adopt the rules with that addition in the final rule. I believe that is possible, although I would need to have someone else check me on that. And I would just say that in terms of those recommending agencies, those don't necessarily represent formal relationships between YDD and these agencies, but just that those agencies or staff thereof could be partners with re-engagement programs, and their recommendation would be an eligibility factor. So there is value in that.
Sam, can I just clarify, sorry? So you wanted to add that to C of 05, of 0005?
Yeah.
And what was the agency? I apologize.
Oregon Health Authority.
Oh, I think.
Yeah, Boyd Chain.
Sorry, Corey, just want to make sure I had it right.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're requesting that as a motion to add.
I don't think you can either.
It's a public records posting issue.
Yeah.
And so you have to move with what was posted.
Yeah.
So in another round of rule making, we can add that posted, seek comment on it, and then adopt it. But I don't think otherwise we could post this and completely change it entirely right now, and that defeats the purpose.
So we can vote on the addition now to add it. And then
yes, and then at a later rule, but it can't be changed right now.
Yeah. So we'd have to then vote in June.
Yes.
On the adoption.
On the change. You could adopt these right now as stated, then repost the change and follow the 90-day posting rules or whatever is required, and then re-adopt, then adopt again.
Okay.
In the next cycle of rule changes or rule.
I guess I'm looking to staff and court and others, like if we adopt as is or vote to approve, then repost, that's what I think I heard you say.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure because this will ultimately impact the re-engagement grants in some way in the coming biennium.
Correct, the RFA was written off of these proposed rule, Jay, I'm looking at my, that's the right, but the current RFA that's currently released is written off of the current language on that side. So to help support that, then if we can approve as written and then move forward with that in June, we can add the Oregon Health Authority.
And then we could tell grantees in the summer, hey, there's another potential referring agency.
Yeah, which would, in theory, if that worked with timeline, Court's the timeline guy, but if that worked with timeline, when these RFAs go into place, then it would all be
Here are the
ready
rules.
to go. Yeah, here are the rules. If that's what the council wants to add. So,
okay.
So, I'm looking at those guys too, so sorry.
I think that's probably the safest way to ensure that we're complying with all laws around rulemaking would be to adopt the rules as a final rules as presented to the council. And then the council, I think, could have a motion to add this, but I think we can just publish draft rules and add in OHA, and we could, if that were the only change, it wouldn't be hard to publish those rules as of April. And then essentially it's a 2-month timeline, from the publication to the adoption. So we could publish them in April and then have the council final rules to adopt at the next council meeting.
Tabidi, did you have? Go ahead. This is Eric. I guess I appreciate the conversation about process. Functionally, though, there's nothing that precludes OHA from making a recommendation. I mean, there wouldn't be any eligibility issue with that omitted, correct? I mean, for the foreseeable.
Not necessarily, as long as they're eligible. The difference with having those referring agencies is they're automatically an eligible re-engaged youth. So it doesn't matter if they're behind in credits or whatnot. If that agency refers it, that's an automatic eligibility. And so, yes, there is advantage for it.
There is advantage for the referring agency, essentially. Okay, thank you for that.
Cool.
Yeah, right.
I know we're a little behind schedule, so I Robin, I don't know if you want to just coordinate, you put the slide up that you wanted to show, but then.
Can we go on to the next slide and we can have a motion to adopt the rules as presented to the council, and then I think we could either have a vote additionally to add that language, or you could just tell us to please do so and we can get that done.
Is there anybody who wants to put this motion forward as recommended?
So moved, Celeste.
Seconded?
Second, Janine. So this is Molly, I have discussion.
Yeah.
Can you leave that? So it sounds super simple to put the words Oregon Health Authority in there. But I actually really want the staff to take a look at that and see if it actually changes intent at all. And not just put those words in there without thinking through what, if any, does that change on the intent of the. Anyway, it sounds easy to put 3 words in.
Yeah.
But let's think through what that intent, if there are any collateral or unintended consequences of doing that.
My hope would be is that if we're going to, in June, put forward new language to add, that we would be considering not just Oregon Health Authority, that we would think about other state agencies that we just had missed the opportunity to include them on, and that we would reflect on what those additions would imply and would it impact.
So just a question for Cord, sorry, I know it's an emotional on the table. If the motion's approved as is for the language, we can still do a rules change even after the July 1 with RFA, correct? I see head nods, so I'm just verifying that we can, so if we didn't put this out for public comment until after the June meeting for these additions, we would be okay in terms of implementing it this cycle?
Yes, I mean, I think that the rule change is, the RFA would not change, but the rule, if a rule change were to happen while grants are in place, and they for instance, create a new eligibility option, then that would just have to be implemented with existing grants. The way that grant agreements are written, I don't even think it would require amendments. I think it would just be guidance and implementation work.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so in looking at this list, and Molly brings up a good point. I guess a discussion of like the type of kids that OHA places. That's, like DHS type of kids, DHS places, the type of kids county juvenile place, type of kids Oregon Youth Authority, like a good number of kids at Oregon Health Authority place, they all have mental health issues, They may not be in the juvenile justice, they may be, and then another subset of kids that they do utilize at my programs to serve are kids on the psychiatric review board, kids that are determined criminally insane. They're not part of OIA, but they're part of OHA.
Age assist.
Yeah, so that's the type, so when she brings up like, do we want to serve those kids, not serve those kids? So, and those kids are very secure.
Very complex.
Yes, so does this OER, this program, what type of kids do we want to serve? Like, these are kids with severe psychiatric needs.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, that's the difference between OHA versus DHS.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right, any other points of discussion? These are all great.
I would just say it seems like an opportunity for our new equity lens toolkit to actually think through what is the impact of adding these agencies. Who's are we prepared for what those young folks need? Are we able to serve them well? I think that seems like an opportunity to put into practice what we just passed today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Time to vote.
Yes. The motion on the table, it's been seconded. Sorry.
Zan Ojero,
I vote aye.
Eric Cardella,
Aye.
Parasa Chanrami,
Aye.
Janine Hartley,
Aye.
Celeste Jansen,
Aye.
Robin Johnson,
Aye.
Andy Leonard, Tabidi Lewis.
I really don't know.
Do you want to abstain?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna abstain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adrian Livingston, Christina McMahon,
Aye.
Maricela Ortega Guzman, sorry. Jeff Parker, Molly Rogers,
Yes.
Diana Rojas, Andy Santana May, Karen Spencer, Janelle Theobald.
Aye. I'm an
Okay,
aye,
still
sorry.
here. Hi, Karen, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
am. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Karen. Janelle Theobald. Liz Thorne,
Yes.
Koi Vu, Kiwi Wilson. Count them up. 7, 8, 9, 12. That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You ready for this?
Yeah,
Ready
it
for-
seems like we should take a break and get the lunch.
Sure, the lunches are ready. All right,
Here.
I'm gonna pause recording if we're ready for a break.
Right, is that,
There
then,
you
so
are.
like, we can
Thank you,
take
Ford.
15
Thanks,
minutes.
everybody.
Yeah, we can take 15 minutes. No, Brad, you grant something.
So we're gonna do youth grant update and turn it over to, excuse me, Paul, as grant manager.
Sorry, I'm getting the sign back on.
No worries. So just if you are following along on your agenda, we smushed the break and the working lunch together. So we're now in the working part of the lunch. But again, if you're like me and you're food driven, please feel free to continue to eat as you would like to. And with that, Paul, I will kick it over to you.
Sounds great, thank you. Melissa, you mind pulling up slide 11?
Oh, 11, not 18. Okay.
I'd just say we're probably 10 minutes-ish behind if I have my rough estimate, so speakers from here forward know that we got some time to catch up.
So starting with the
To get
RFA
out
and
of
sovereign
here at
nation updates, is that right? Okay.
And I think this will be, hopefully this should be relatively short. All right, so a lot has happened since the last council meeting. So wanted to give a quick update on the 23-25 RFAs, as well as the sovereign nation updates. If you want to hit the next slide, sorry, on that. So two motions that were made at the December meeting. And I'm assuming I'm okay being over here. I don't need to move to the camera. Sorry, you and I touched this. Am I good? Am I on camera-ish?
I'm like, can I, you are, you're on the edge of the camera. Yeah,
All
thanks.
right, I couldn't see it anymore. So, all right, so the motion to research and move sovereign nation funding into a committee, we've been working on that over the past few months. It's been some very interesting and exciting conversations. So just a quick update is that we did meet with 2 committees, the Policy Rules and Research Committee, as well as Equity and Disparity Committee, and talking about that work. We've also, as YDD staff, have met with ODE, Office of Indian Education, ODE Procurement, and DOJ. So we tried to do a lot of research in terms of what next.
Say what
steps.
DOJ is.
Oh, Department of Justice, right? Yes, perfect. I don't know, I know what a DOJ is, sorry about that. So we've met with them, trying to get some guidance on kind of what next steps look like. And really in meeting with DOJ, there's some rule process or rule adjustments that we may want to consider to really move things forward and solidify a very focused sovereign nation funding plan. So with that information, and I would say ODE, Office of Indian Education, was super supportive of the work. They're actually working on some other stuff themselves around this. And so this is a topic that nobody was surprised when we were asking. And we got really good response on it. But we do feel like we need some time to really ground it and research it before launching it in this RFA session. And so what we've done is Brian and I have reached out to all of the 9 federally recognized tribes. We've obviously met with some of them we haven't, and are encouraging them to apply for the 23-25 RFA process, which is currently out. And then we're going to continue to work on that. And my understanding is, and Jared, you might correct me on this, but we're going to work on forming that committee here over the next couple of months to really look at what we can do for the 25-27 biennium and have that solidified. And again, that's going to probably be some adjustments in our rules
and how we fund. And I think that in talking with DOJ early on in this process, they really felt like that was going to be the most solid way to move the plan forward and also solidify it and not just kind of be an initiative we do one site. As part of that, and we can, if you have looked at the RFAs, we did leave a 10% multiplier for sovereign nations that are applying for any of our RFA funds for this cycle. And so that we've seen that as a good response, and everybody that at least Brian and I have met with, or I've met with over the course of the last 6 months or so have appreciated that and recognized that on. So before I go on to the RFA stuff that we made a motion on, just any questions on the sovereign nation work? Eric?
I'm trying to remember from our last meeting, this is Eric. Did we do any of our community listening sessions in tribal land or with tribal partners?
Yes. So when we were traveling and doing those conversations, if there was a tribe or a sovereign nation in the area, we would reach out and we did either a specific, just kind of a one-on-one with our contacts there, or specifically like Umatilla, which Brian and I are going back today, back to Umatilla. They actually hosted us, and we had a very specific listening session on that. We also met, I'm trying to remember the other tribes we met with. Cow Creek and Warm Springs. As part of that, as part of our communications for the application and encouragement, Brian and I have extended that as hey, we'd still like to meet with you. We're continuing these community conversations. Selfishly, we kind of hit pause on traveling to do those conversations with the RSA work, but I think we're excited to bring that back up this spring.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. No, great question. I appreciate it. Like I said, it's been an interesting learning process. I don't know if the others that have joined me on the YDC staff have any comments about the sovereign nation work, but it's definitely moving forward as best we can. All right. So, Brian, you didn't steal my thunder. I thought you would have opened with that. The 23-25 youth grants update. So yes, excited to say that we had that launched on the 1st. We kind of did just a huge kudos to the team. Everybody working on it. Like it was definitely a team effort. It was exciting to come together for some in-person work to build some of that work out, as well as just some alignment. And so one of the things I think people will see in the application process is some consistency across all three, more consistency across all three. So we did what was called common elements, and we looked at every RFA very closely and said, can we make this a common path in terms of our applicants that apply for a multitude of them? So including the application on SM Apply should look very similar across the board. Different questions, obviously, but again, pretty excited to say that we've done that. So if you want to hit the next slide for me. Timeline wise, so we are having the RFAs open through May 1. That's a Monday. I think 5 p.m. technically is when they close on May 1. We are now, next week, we'll be kicking off the pre-application conferences. And you'll notice we actually have 4 pre-application conferences on there. This is a new piece that we actually did through Gov to Gov last time, the governor to governor relations meetings, but we'll do one pre-application conference for each of the RFAs. And then we're going to do one specifically focused to help support sovereign nations who are applying on it. So everybody's encouraged and able to attend any of these. These are open to the interested, but that sovereign nation will specific pre-application conference will work to address those questions from the tribes that are applying. It will cover all 3 of the pieces to make sure that we're equitable and following process with our RFAs. We'll stop the meeting for during the sovereign meeting after 30 minutes and then move to the next RFA. So there'll be a kind of a process on that. But excited to have that. And then obviously we'll move into RFA evaluation, and that's a little technical fix that we wanted to talk about today at the meeting as well. On that, as we were researching and prepping for this research, we have a technical fix to what the council approved last December. So before I kind of move on, any questions about the schedule and the timeline? Again, huge task and huge kudos to everybody on the team that made that happen. There's a lot of us, I think, that had long hours, but we met that March 1. I'm excited to say. So if you want to move to the next, sorry. Yes.
So when you say RFA evaluation, that means when you're going to ask for volunteers to review the grant application. That's what.
Yep. Absolutely. And I have, we've changed that process a little bit too, to hopefully make it easier for all involved on that. More to come. I have that in a couple of slides here. So the technical fix, if you want to hit the next slide for me, please. I guess I can watch this one too.
There we go.
All right. So when we were meeting with procurement, one of the things that we started talking about was around the review panels convening. And so to kind of put that in context, the last time we did this, we had 16 review panels. And so when the reviewers, so 3 to 5 reviewers, depending on the size of the teams, will review each application individually. And then in the last 21-23 biennium, we brought every one of those teams together to talk about their applications or the application reviews, answering the questions that they had around it. And we also discussed around the deviating scores. So if they were a certain separation apart, then we discussed those purposely on. That last biennium, we had 16 of those meetings. Upwards of, Bill and I facilitated those. We were well over about 50 to 60 hours of facilitating those meetings. Procurement said, that's a lot, which understandable. And so what our technical fix is that while that is a great conversation, and honestly, I think we all felt that it was a really positive thing, we don't know if we can do that in the timeline, because I'm anticipating almost probably another increase in 30% of applications. So that would probably put us over 20 to 25 of those meetings. So what we're proposing, what we're doing as a technical fix is that we're allowing review panels to convene and discuss applications with deviating scores. We're using a new rubric this year. It's a 10-point scale, so we don't exactly know what those deviating scores will be. So procurement will determine that after everybody's been reviewed. So if you move, and you can see there is some detail within that. Other than that, all of the review process will stay the same. It's just we're not requiring that meeting. So if you want to go to the next slide. In prepping this slide, I did change it from the presentation in December because it was long, and it's nice to not have to talk as fast, I'm not gonna lie. But so the reviewers will be trained on the scoring rubric, and then they will be assigned a review team. So again, that 3-person team, you can see that in gray. And they're gonna say if they have a conflict or not. Where the change comes in from what was presented is that preliminary scores will be reviewed by procurement and a deviating score difference determined. And so if there's so at a 10-point scale, if somebody has a 9 and somebody has a 2 in that, that's probably a pretty deviating score. So that application would be considered a deviating score. Again, that'll be determined once we see where those scores land. And then at that point, each panel with deviating score or scores will convene at the end of the evaluation review period to review questions with those deviating scores. So we're not going to talk about every application. It'll be very specific to where those scores are. So for example, if a review team has 2 applications out of the 12 or 15 that they review that have deviating scores, those will be the 2 that are discussed. If there is not a determination of that, those scores will be considered final from that initial review of that team. So, and any questions on that? I dive in a little bit into the weeds, but wanted to make sure that the council knew about change. I saw a lot of head nods when you heard the hours. I wasn't. It was an amazing experience, and I think it's a really cool thing. So, but with the amount of applications that we're currently doing, we felt this was an important change to try to stay on that July 1 date. So, and again, it's Brian and I have discussed this. We didn't feel it needed to go to vote, other than that it's a technical change. All right, perfect. So now the fun part. So if you want to go to the next slide, sorry. So this is where we get to start recruiting reviewers, and this has changed a little bit in our conversations with procurement, partially because of the amount of applications we're going to have. We have some more flexibility. So. Who can review is really anybody that's interested in supporting this process. The preferred age range is above 18, but it's not necessarily required of that it has to be, but we would want to do a little bit further research in terms of what that looks like to support that young reviewer. We do want to really encourage that 18 to 25-year-old range to be a part of the application process, because we really think they have a very important voice in this process. So with these changes, one of the couple of things to really note that is exciting is YDD partners, grantees, and really applicants that aren't applying in the specific RFA can actually come and help review something different. So for example, if they're applying for a community investment grant, they would be allowed to review re-engagement or future ready. And honestly, this came about from our community conversations, is that we heard over and over again of our grantees saying, how can we help with that process? Not because we want to increase our odds, but how can we give back to the YDC? So it was pretty exciting to do that, and procurement supporting on that side of it. So any questions on who can volunteer? I'd like to encourage anybody that's on the council that wants to volunteer, because this is a reminder, we have changed that process as well, is that you no longer have to approve the slate as the council, Brian does. And so we'll update you on it. So the process that you want to be a part of, it's definitely something you can be.
How often do you get young people, 18 to 20, to join this?
In all honesty, it was very limited the last time. We didn't ask the question. And so I don't really have any solid data to come across. Having facilitated the conversations, I don't remember really, I mean, the majority age was similar to the room of that. I don't know, Phil, if you have any thoughts on it?
What are you saying there, Bill?
I'm included in that now. I'm not gonna say it.
Without knowing, I'm asking that question because I'm trying to think about, just in the work that I find myself doing, really, how we become multipliers, right? And how do we, make sure that the successive generations are involved, right? And it's opportunity to learn, but also really learning what the heck do they want? I mean, this idea of being, the kind of, here we are and going, oh yeah, this is what you want, but literally having young people saying, this is this is not gonna work. They're not, you know what I'm saying? And so really, trying to figure out how to make young people aware of that and getting them involved. Never knew I could be on a school board when I was 18 or, things like that.
Right. Yeah. And I think this.
So I think that's work of the council too.
Agreed. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think the other exciting part is that we can now, with this change of allowing our grantees to be able to help review, we're gonna be very focused on trying to recruit from them, some of their youth that they have involved in that. So I don't know, all I can say is I'm excited. I have no idea what it's gonna look like, but excited to say that we're moving towards that and really focused on that work. So, question?
Do the reviewers need to live in Oregon, be a resident of Oregon?
That is a great question. Honestly, I don't know. I've never asked procurement that question. So let me, and maybe, Cord, are you on? Sorry, I'm kind of randomly.
Yes.
Do you know the answer to that question?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Just one of the criteria doesn't seem to be resident of Oregon, so I was just asking for clarification. If reviewers need to reside in Oregon or.
I don't think that there is a residency requirement, and I for one would not be able to review any applications if we were to implement that. I'm one of about 400 plus state employees who would be ineligible under that criteria. There are also some folks who have worked in organizations in Oregon or, have some community knowledge or involvement, where I think even if their residency has changed, they might still have valuable insight. So I think that could be a reason we didn't put that in. We've just never really considered it, to be honest.
Yeah. And actually, if you want to move to the next slide, we are changing how we're processing interest in reviewers. If you participated in it last time, you know that you emailed me directly, and trying to get upwards of 100 reviewers into our reviewer pool, that is really hard to follow in the email. So we are actually switching it to an online form that either YDD staff can fill out if we're having a conversation, or we'll send it out. And it's kind of a brief questionnaire that will really help us understand who the reviewer is and create that. And I say that, and I switched to this slide because we don't ask if they're out in state or out of state. The only thing that really has changed in our questions is really around, are you under 18? Are you in between the 18 to 25 range? And then are you over 25? And that's so that we also want to, if we do get a solid pool of young people reviewing, we want to make sure that we help support them. And so we would purposely try to make sure that they were divided up across our review teams and not just placed on the committee. So we're trying to really monitor that so that we can help support that process. So in your packet, I believe, right?
Actually, they're separate. They're on the table so people could take them as they go.
So Cord and I were building the PDF flyer of recruiters yesterday, so it didn't get back. I apologize. So Jessica's gonna help hand it out. That is a paper flyer of recruitment, and I believe Melissa's gonna be sending it out here after the meeting. Please do share it out. We're going to do a pretty heavy recruitment for reviewers, and we're opening up that pool. So we're going to be hitting our Gov delivery system. So anybody that's signed up to it will get emails and ask if you're interested in reviewing. We're going to follow up with the community conversations as well. And so that's kind of part of the reason why we're switching to this Google Form piece. So when you get that electronic copy, all the links will work, and you can send that out, and people can just select that link and sign up. And Jessica and I will be coordinating the reviewer pool. Now with the RFAs released, we have an official process we get to follow where we want to make sure that we don't intermix who our reviewers are and who's working behind the scenes with the scores and those types of things on that side. So again, exciting, some new processes.
Do people get rejected, and if so, why?
I honestly haven't personally rejected anybody that is applying. One of the big challenges that I would really encourage when you're recruiting people is we need people to work within that time frame because it is super tight. And that would be when we would remove somebody from reviewing, or if they have a conflict of interest or other things, then we wouldn't want them to do on that side. So the reality is when we are in the throes of the review, about that 2-week mark, it's about a 3.5 week opening to review your applications. About that 2-week mark, that's when Abe and I get to go into Ask and Apply and send out reminders that we need you to go in and review. And if we aren't seeing that progress, then we would have to sub out with an alternative reviewer. But that's typically where that would come in. Yeah, we want as big and as diverse a pool of reviewers as we can. So your guys' help on recruiting is all would be great.
Hey, sorry, Paul, this is Cord. I think maybe additional information to share. We've never, to my knowledge, rejected someone, but we have declined to invite folks back who did not submit their reviews on time or anything. So if someone were to say, I want to do it again, we might just sort of like say, yeah, we'll let you know. That's about
Can I ask something, one more question?
Yeah, please.
Because I'm really interested in this, curing a stronger participation from young people. And I know they should be mature enough to follow through, but if we're able to make a push, because I'm really thinking about this for younger people, creating the preferred provisions to create a little support for helping them help us, which will also help.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And we've had that conversation as a grants team. Right now, we don't have anything in place to be able to do that. And I think it's something that we should probably research further to understand where it is. But currently, we don't have anything in place to provide any compensation or anything for the reviewers, which is unfortunate. I agree with you, and I think that's something that we need to continue to research and figure out how to support that in future processes.
Thank you. Although, I mean, one thing that this is a sort of a tangent, but something we do, we can. I think we need to do a little bit more research. We have the ability to support people around this table on the council who are showing up. Thank you, Janelle, and others, all of you for showing up. That we can compensate council members for their time on council business. Whether or not that extends to the application review process or not, I don't know. But we do have those resources to BD, like at just council business and committee meetings and that kind of thing. I think we thought about whether or not we could bring to this meeting some more sort of guidance around that. I don't think we're there yet because that's just many other things going on. But that legislation was passed in the couple of years ago, I think, And so we have that ability, we just need to give us a little more time to kind of figure out the right framework for that. And maybe it could extend to this review process, or if we had somebody who was on a committee who wasn't officially on the cap, I don't know, there's just, I agree, incentivizing and encouraging young people and compensating where we can, or maybe we creating some budget around that. I think we've got some, I'm interested and want to do that, they just need to figure out how.
I agree. So I don't know
was
if
just saying non-monetary support, but that's a better idea.
So, right, and, well, so back to the earlier point, and again, we're pressed on time, so we're keeping this moving. I think part of the reason we're asking the question about if they're 18 to 25 is so that at least that awareness exists among the grants team and the evaluation teams to be able to offer some additional support. So asking the question will allow us to, both spread them out on teams so that it's not, everybody's not clumped in some fashion, but okay, what can we do? Well, we should be aware as a team that we've got somebody who's 19 and super enthusiastic and great, and checking in and being available if there are questions.
And my hope is that not being a reviewer myself, I can actually reach out and check in more. So that kind of just that initial support, so you don't feel like you're out on this island on your own, right? Like definitely we're trying to set up systems. We do that for all reviewers, but specifically I think we'll want to set up a plan for seeing where we are with the younger reviewers for sure. I appreciate that. I gotta admit, I don't think I caught up any time. So apologize.
Are you done?
Well, we got the data update, which I think we can go through quickly. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Molly and Bill, which may be able to create some catch up of time. But our goal within the youth grants is to share out kind of where we are on a yearly basis with our data, because we have not done that typically in the past as much. And so really just compliments to Molly and Bill for getting this kind of next level of data information to it. So I don't know who's going first, so I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Let's see.
Next, yep.
All right, Bill Hansel, Grant Manager of Youth Development in Oregon. This first slide, and I'll also direct you to a page in your packet. It is the Community Investment Grant Summary, that's abbreviated CI. The important thing about this slide, it kind of gives you a breakdown. I'll show it in a visual representation here in a moment, but this is likely an undercount, 5,199 youth served, because there are 14 grants excluded from this analysis. The reason for that exclusion by and large is because in our solutions category, we allow systems level work. And so it's a different level of, like when you count school populations, or schools are your level of measurement, that's gonna generate thousands, a count of thousands. So that's the main difference there, is that this 5,199 youth served in year one is a slight undercount. Here's that in a visual representation by grant type. You can see up and away, at least by twice, our promise category serves the most youth. That's where our Title 20 funding lies as well. There are
Bill, can you say what the Title 20 is?
Title 20 is the federal social service block grant funds that we pass through from DHS actually receives those funds. We pass them through to our grantees. So it's and federal funds as well. So that was something we hadn't mentioned earlier, but also a success is we've aligned our funding from a federal calendar year to the state, which we look forward to causing less confusion. Here, I think is, if you advance the slide, please, yes. I want to speak to this one. This is the community investment participation by race, ethnicity, and by gender. And I want to point out a couple items. Our Native American population, which is coming in here at 282. is over 5 times. That's a 5% of our population, which is 5 times greater than their representation in K-12 education. So that's exciting. Also exciting is the representation of the category Black African American student, which is coming in at 792. And that represents 15% of our population. They are approximately 2% of the student population, so that's 7 times the amount. And we're 4% higher in serving Hispanic Latinos than in the student population. And we serve white youth at a rate of 34% compared to nearly 60% in the student population. I mention that because I think that's a strong indicator of the work that we're doing is reaching and addressing the disparities in outcomes. I think it's evidence that the youth who need these supports are getting. I don't know if we should pause for questions. I can do that on the CI side or just pass it over to the re-engagement side, but I'm happy to entertain questions now.
I know we're pressed for time, so I just want to say thank you. And I know, Molly, you're going to probably go next, but one of the things I think that was also highlighted in our strategic plan, and it's just something as an agency we've been wanting to be more sort of data driven, data aware, whatever the right phrase is. And as we go into our budget presentations, which I did yesterday, having a better handle on this kind of data has been something that I've been really interested in, and know that it's taken a lot of time and effort, and Bill's focus among others, Molly's as well, and grant managers. So I just think that we are able to have this data and then disaggregate it in this way is a big step. I don't know, others who've been around longer than me, I mean, but we are putting focus and effort in this, and we'll share with you more on the re-engagement side. And then those comparisons that Bill laid out help us have a bigger understanding. On our juvenile crime prevention work, I think we've seen a lot of really good data, and to have this kind of data now on our community investment side and re-engagement is just, to me, really exciting. So kudos to the team.
Brian, thank you for that. I'll mention one more thing, and that is on the gender slide. I think it's exciting that we have a non-binary. We're going to advance that as well. When I compared this to the student count in ODE, they don't even have that category represented. And they were about 49% male, female gender. And you can see we have 202 non-binary reported, and that represents about 4%. So that we're picking up more than that 4% would be, more than ODE even reports. So anyway, I thought that's an important piece of the data too. With that, I'll pass it to Molly.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So Molly Burns, YDO Grant Manager, and like Bill, what I've done is brought a glimpse of year 1 data of the 21-23 re-engagement opportunity grants. And you can see that grantees reported about 3,000 youth were outreached to for re-engagement services, outreach being a known contact or a referral known to the youth. 1,460 youth enrolled in re-engagement programs, excuse me, during this first year of the biennium. Of those, 785 stayed engaged in re-engagement programming for 120 days or more. And the youth earned 320 high school credentials, and there was about 100 GEDs, credentials included in that. Next slide. So what this slide is showing is the age distribution by the youth that enrolled in re-engagement programs. And the green highlight there. It shows the credentials earned by age. And so you can see that 18-year-olds earned the greatest number of credentials in this first year.
Oh, why? Could you like define what credential is? Like, is it academic credits or is it like diploma?
Yes, so the credentials that are counted here are a regular high school diploma, modified high school diploma, extended high school diploma was included. There was just about maybe 4, and then GED credential. So the high school diploma or its equivalent in Oregon.
So you're saying 14-year-olds, 14-year-olds graduated from high school or got a GED?
Participated.
So the blue is just the participation on the bar graph, and so the green shading is, you know, the kind of that bell-shaped curve of who got the credentials.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
No, thank you for clarifying.
But it is worth noting that, you know, this is really just a glimpse of where we're at. And so then once we get that second year, we'll just continue to work with this data. And the final slide is representing these self-identified reasons that youth are giving for school disconnection, as well as for entering re-engagement programming. And on this particular, this item, the programs are asking the youth or surveying them at entrance into the re-engagement program, and they can select and identify as many reasons as they wish to. And so what we see on the reasons most cited for school disconnection, academic other tops the list, and other is unspecified in the data. It's broadly defined as a lack of educational support to meet the youth's academic needs, is what that means. That's followed by credit deficiency, social other, and I think it's useful to point out that home life was cited by 350 individual youth in the data as they were entering, explaining why they disconnected or left their high school. And in terms of reasons, question?
Yeah, Molly, I was just gonna ask, is students who are parenting themselves one of the options, or is that included in home life? I'm just wondering.
That is a good question. For reason for disengaging, pregnant or parenting youth is an option, and I can get you that number.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was included in home life, but it sounds like it's not, it's a separate category.
It's a separate category.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so, the social, and it says social other, what, can you give a little more details into that? And I have a second question, which is the disciplinary. What's the, already, I'm gonna guess the answer, but I'm gonna ask you. What's the racial disparity around the disciplinary with those students as well?
Okay, so social other is broadly defined as the school social environment. And it's kind of interesting because it's reflective of the answers for why they entered the program. Those top 3 reasons are kind of coming out. As far as really looking at these and trying to pull apart, as you asked, like the racial disparity and answers in, we haven't done any of that work yet. So I can certainly look at that. Bill can work with me on that and we can get that to you for sure.
I'd love to see that. I mean, I think studies from state to state show the sort of criminalizing of youth along, racial and ethnic lines. But, and that's a smaller number, but, okay. Hey, one more comment, and I guess this is also connected to the grants. How do we, or maybe I'm missing it, and I don't mind being wrong. As we roll out the request for grants, is there a way we can keep at the forefront of the minds of people who would be saying that they're going to provide these services? Hey, here are the 3 or 4 major issues that are really impacting our young people. We don't want to guide what you do, but we want you to keep, and I know people are aware of that, but just sort of really keeping it at the forefront of, how are we getting here, right? And so certainly the academic changes based on socioeconomics of different schools, et cetera, we get all that, and same thing around the social other. But just, I'm almost in, anyway, I'm not gonna take up the time, we're off, we can chat a little later, but it's making me think about some kind of proactive measures in communication with the entities where these things are happening, because I don't wanna keep, I wanna get the most out of every single dollar. And I'm saying this in passion as a person who did not go to the best schools, and it's about opportunity, right? And the difference between the socioeconomics, who does what, is about resources, right? And what the situations are. So anyway, this is excellent information, but I'm just asking, how do we put those things together? And I only got up because I couldn't see from the
We do have some other questions in chat. I can go ahead.
We probably have like 4 minutes. If we can.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's important to address what you said, because although this is like a quick 30-second slide here, the work that the re-engagement opportunity grantees are doing in order to gather this information is really incredible, and it is really a heavy lift for them to be doing it, but we're all dedicated to it to try to start to understand school disconnection better. And it's really baby steps going forward. So when we see something like academic other, and then really that opens a conversation for the grantees to really, the people on the ground talking with their students and really trying to get a better understanding of this. So it's in its infancy, but I appreciate the appreciation of really, for us in Oregon to try to better understand this across the communities that we serve. You have more questions?
I could address just one thing too. I think the entire re-engagement grant program, which is now funded at 8 million or so, at one time lived in CI. And it was an emphasis that we had towards opportunity, what we defined as opportunity youth. And it was encouraged through our RFA, and then, and same thing could happen. Governor has released her priorities. Literacy is one of those. We have the ability to kind of focus on like, hey, we want, early literacy programs to apply for our, we have that ability, and the council has that authority. But I just wanted to point out, I think re-engagement represents one of those things where it is now its own entity, but it started as kind of, let's emphasize reconnecting out of school youth. And that came about from our analysis of existing data and looking at what are the issues, where are the disparities, what populations are being impacted.
Let's go to the Zan questions real quick.
Zan, do you want to unmute, or go ahead?
Sure. And I recognize that these questions can't all be answered right now, given our time constraints. But I've had a couple of questions. One was about whether we know how long on average students are engaged with grantees. And given that we only have 1 year's data, that probably isn't very meaningful yet. Also, how variable are these data by grantee? Do we have that kind of granular data? And are there outliers? Are there programs or grantees that are really successful and some that aren't, as measured by the achievement of credentials? And I recognize that credentials are not the only outcome that has merit. And I'm also wondering whether we include apprenticeships or trade school certifications as recognized credentials as an outcome. So I have all kinds of questions, but that's just things to mull over for next time around.
Thank you. I think that these are really excellent questions as we dig into the data that we can really start to look at and hopefully bring an update the next time.
And real quick to one aspect, this is what is I think is awesome, is that we do collect data at the individual level. by and large. There are certain programs in a certain group called solutions, like I stated earlier, have a different thing, but otherwise it's individual level data, so I can tell you gender and race participation by program, and number of youth served by program, and
Credential and.
what was that?
And credential and.
Yes, and the re-engagement specifically has those type of questions. CI, because we cover such a wide, we may have a second grade reading program and a credit recovery program, and those two have different outcomes.
Thank you.
All right. I think we gotta move.
All right, on the next thing.
You're what is it? 20 minutes left. Paul, is that?
So Jared just got,
Jared.
real quick,
Yep, I think it's me. I will keep it quick. I know we're pressed for time. Unfortunately, we only have 2 slides here. Again, Jared Shaw, YDO Grant Manager. So just wanted to give you a couple more updates on what's happening with our current grants. So if you recall, I think it was last meeting, we talked about how letters had gone out to all grantees about just being good stewards of state funds, and if they knew that they were not going to be able to spend out the entirety of their grants, we asked them to let us know and to return any remaining funds to us sooner rather than later, so we could get them reallocated to other grantees who have the capacity to spend out. That process has begun. We have, now that we're at the end of quarter 6, out of 8 quarters, we've had a few grantees who've indicated that they will return some funds to us, not many yet, but a few have started that process. So we've begun that process with procurement to pull back those funds, and then we're discussing internally how we can reallocate those to grantees who have the capacity to spend out before June 30th. So that is in process. Re-engagement convenings. So we have, if you recall last time, I think we also talked about how for our re-engagement grants, we've had several convenings throughout the biennium, some online, some in person, where we're bringing all of our re-engagement grantees together to talk about best practices, challenges, sharing of resources, that type of stuff. And so we have 2 final convenings coming up at the end of the biennium, one on May 4th in the Portland metro area in person, and one on May 9th in Southern Oregon. So we wanted to let you all know that council members are welcome to attend those, as well as other grantees who are sort of members of this re-engagement system that we're building, but we will be going around the state, those final 2 convenings at the beginning of May. So you are welcome to join. Sorry?
You know time?
Time, I think we put hold about 10 to 2 or 3 each day. So yeah, probably about 3 to 4 hours in there.
and I would just email one of us. We have an Eventbrite link set up, so if you're interested, let us know and we'll just get you included into it. Yeah, absolutely.
Jared, this is Eric. I'll be quick. I know you said there were only a few that had indicated they were returning funds. Do you have any even anecdotally reasons why?
Yeah, I'd say it varies. A lot of hiring issues. I think at the beginning, because of COVID, there were some grantees who couldn't hire. There were just some grantees who had to shift plans based on COVID again. So yeah, a lot of hiring challenges we're seeing, I think.
The other one is that there has been an abundance of funds, kind of one-time funds.
Can't spend it all.
Yeah, and so they're flush with unencumbered funds that they can spend without the requirements around our funds. And so, that has been at play, but that's drying up.
And can you remind me and other council members, we had this question, is there any opportunity to request extension of funds, or is it only to return?
Currently, no. Unfortunately, June 30 date is pretty solid.
That's my.
Court and I are talking about like what can we look at or where do we look at it for this biennium. June 30 is the.
Yeah, because winter is coming, right?
There is one caveat on that, and that is with the federal funds. They operate different than our general funds, but it is not set up such that a grantee can request an extenuation. If they're awarded again, right, like then we don't lose those funds, so to speak. The general fund goes somewhere.
Right. Thank you.
Somewhere. And then, sorry, I have one question. Do you have an estimate of how much will be reallocated?
Yeah, I think for re-engagement, we have slightly over 200,000, and then for community investment right now, I think we're at about 150 50, is that right?
Just over 2, because we had that additional return fund.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, so not a huge amount when you think about the amount of funds we have out right now.
And allocated to current grantees is the presumption.
Yeah, we don't have time to create new grantees, unfortunately.
For anyone watching at home.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, but that point has, I mean, I think Tabidi brought that up once, other council members have brought up
So-
the idea, so we should speak to it.
So yes, so kind of, Tabidi brought up the idea early on, and so we are looking at setting up some policies currently for the reallocation of these funds, which Jared's leading, obviously. And then next time, if we have funds returned early on in the grant cycle, meaning year 1, then we're gonna try to reallocate those funds earlier. So we're setting up processes in place, because as everybody knows, it takes a while to get through it. So yes, we're kind of doing a twofold approach.
I think Sam had a question.
Well, no, I have to answer it. I was just wondering if, cause like for our programs, OD Fiscal asked for a monthly balance sheet of our general funds and our spend rate. So I was wondering if OD Fiscal asked for your general fund balances and spend rate.
I know, well.
In short, because we're depending on ODE accounting and finance, yes, they do provide that to us. So yes, I can't speak to how up to date and accurate those reports are. So I think that work that grant managers are doing in a proactive way tends to be as and more important than a report. But
And to be perfectly honest, we borrow our data guy to help us keep track of the funds. Like because the Bill's monitoring that, so we have a pretty accurate.
Time is short.
Yes, yeah. We can go to the next slide. All right, regarding some specific grants, so the re-engagement collaborative grants. Those have, I think, been all executed at this point. So we had the re-engagement opportunity grants that went out at the beginning of the biennium. Now we have the re-engagement collaborative grants that have gone out, those have been executed, and those grantees are working on leading collaborative efforts within their regions. Again, you heard from Multnomah ESD this morning, they have collaborative grants. So it's that type of work, pulling together organizations in their regions to make sure youth are accessing those services across in a cross-sector way. Future Ready Oregon grants, those are in the process of being executed right now. And those are working on a variety of workforce initiatives, particularly paid work experiences, job placements, and credential attainment. And then our community schools grants. So just off of those, I believe, those are $20,000 a piece, pretty small, but we do hear from those community schools that they make a huge difference in those communities. So those grant agreements have been finalized, and those grantees will draw down those funds as soon as they're loaded into eGames, which is our grant management software.
And just to note, all of those, they can backfill to certain dates according to the grant agreement. So grantees are, it's just more of just that we are excited to say that we are executing almost every grant that's they're all pretty much executed at this point. So that's that's exciting. So I think that's it.
That's it for me. Anyone else have any questions?
The last slide too.
Okay.
All right, got 12 minutes, Robin.
All right, are we gonna go to the state advisory?
I think so. State advisory, Melissa, do we have any public comment? I don't see anybody here, except for Michelle's wonderful mother. So I think we won't have public comment unless we hear, I think you guys are, I think this
I'll be
committee,
fast.
you'll be fast and
Yeah.
probably, maybe there's a minute or two at the end. My update, I think we'll have to provide in a written fashion to you all. You've heard most of the stuff that's critical and important, so I can write something and then we'll have to send you links for this, the Grantee Spotlight. Northwest Oregon Workforce Board put together some great videos and their staff, and you're encouraged to look at them, listen to them, hear them. They're fun and interesting, and so.
Okay, Juvenile Justice Committee. I think Anya said I get to lead off with it, but she's gonna do cleanup if I miss anything. First and foremost, I would like to invite every council member to join the Juvenile Justice Subcommittee. Meets the first Monday of every month, 1 to 3. It is a very active committee and we have a lot on our agenda. And so it's fun. It's actually a meeting I look forward to hosting as a facilitator. The legislative piece, you heard a couple different things earlier today in that slide. One was on the Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee.
And how does that align with our work as the state advisory group and the juvenile justice subcommittee of the Oregon Youth Development, I don't know. Hey, hi, Andy. So the focus really is on the adult side. There is something similar couched at Criminal Justice Commission. And years ago, I think it was 13-15, but I can't remember for sure. It might have been 11-13. The Criminal Justice Commission launched the Justice Reinvestment dollars. And that is kind of what spurred the representative's interest in the Juvenile Justice Advisory Council inside CJC. It happens to align with currently the Council of State Governments is doing work with Oregon Judicial Department around our benches, juvenile justice judges across the state. And so the opportunity came up that Council of State Governments might help staff something at the CJC. It's still in very preliminary conversations. And at first, I have to admit, there was kind of this gasp of going back to what Oregon once had, which is the Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee, which Christina sat on multiple years ago. And I think that the missions actually are not aligned the same. I think we complement each other, not compete against each other. And I think ensuring we have the right people at the table, making sure Brian's at the table, making sure Anya's the juvenile justice specialist for that piece, I think is really critical. The other is around the age, the minimum age bill. And potentially receiving additional dollars at our table through the juvenile crime prevention funding to serve the population under the age of 12 who historically may have come into the juvenile justice system, but actually being able to provide services to prevent them or add services for those youth with those behavioral issues. Did I do okay, Christina? Okay. Christina has been absolutely critical in testifying and being kind of the subject matter expert on this particular population because of the 5 different jurisdictions she's worked in over the years.
Are you saying I'm seasoned?
You're number 2 in the state. Anyway, so those pieces are coming up and we're watching those very closely, but those have potential direct impact. We're also headed back, our members of our SAG team are headed back to Washington, DC at the end of May to do Hill Day, of course, and then the CJJ conference, which Oregon is going to be represented by some local presenters, but also to reauthorize the act.
The JJD.
Yes, that's
Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention.
It was gone, thank you so much.
I got you.
So we'll be just educating because similar to Oregon State Legislature, our delegation back in Washington, DC has changed. And so just giving information on the great work we do here locally with those dollars. And then finally, that committee is going to be taking on another part that is in statute required by the group, and that is our detention guidelines. And so we'll be kicking off working on detention guidelines over the next probably 6 months. I'm not going to give us any tighter timelines than that. If we get it done in 9, I'm going to feel really confident that we've done a great job. Because we do it as a pretty collaborative process and we include different stakeholders and voices at the table. And so that is also on our plate. Did I miss anything? I went really fast. And JCP.
Oh, the JCP plan.
Yeah.
The plan.
So pat everybody on the back on the March 1st dates and the early March dates. I think our JCP plans went out sometime in February. Right. County, our partners are super excited because we're going to be able to have our agreements in place early enough that there's not going to be those lag times between when grants are approved and when we can actually be receiving the dollars. And so huge thank you to YDD staff getting that done. And then also a huge appreciation to Lawrence coming on board and reaching out and making connections with the juvenile directors and providing technical assistance, because those are non-competitive grants, so there's not the same kind of protections against information. And so Anya and Lawrence have both been like, let us help you. Let us have conversations ahead of time so that when the grants come in, they're ready to be approved.
Sounds good, Molly. Could I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
I don't think everybody around the table has met Lawrence.
Oh, sorry.
Lawrence.
Who's that guy?
I know, right? I see him all the time now.
Listen to this.
So for those of you who are not YDC staff or members of the Juvenile Justice Committee, Lawrence White is our new racial and ethnic disparities coordinator. He took the position after Sanjay Moore left to pursue other career opportunities with the state of Oregon. But Lawrence joined us even before he actually came on board. He joined us in San Diego at the OJDP conference. So Lawrence is leading our racial and ethnic disparities work, and there will be more to come. So very pleased to have him here.
Well, thank you. And again, my name is Lawrence White, the new racial and ethnic disparity coordinator with YDD. I'm pleased to do this work and work with all of you, and of course, all of the juvenile department directors as well. So thank you for having me, and thank you for lunch.
The final is that we're looking at writing an application to CJJ, which is the Coalition of Juvenile Justice, to actually use our SAG as a potential conversation around juvenile probation reform in the state of Oregon. And again, it aligns nicely with the work with CJC, if that is passed, as well as the work that CJC is doing with our judicial branch. It would align nicely and bring our SAG to that table. Now, did I forget anything?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And that's a foundation for the future. So potentially we could align our 3-year plan for the federal monies with the probation reform. So that would be affecting 24, 26.
And there's no cost, right?
There's no cost.
Yes.
There is no
For
cost.
the-
Any
yeah, for
case
the-
is funding
yeah,
the
for
whole
the-
project.
Yes, very good catch. I know I covered a lot really fast, but I
We did it.
Thank God you did it. 3 minutes is
Thank you. All right, do we have time for any of the other committee reports?
It would be nice to hear, I think we've heard a fair amount, like, from policy rules, we've heard from them, more or less. Youth committee.
You're done.
Yeah, you're
Well, I will just pause and say, I know we're almost at time, so if anybody does need to leave at 1, want to respect everyone's time, so that's okay. For those who can stay a little bit longer, we're gonna be wrapping up shortly. What committees did we not touch
I
on?
think youth committee.
Youth committee? Great.
I can give it a bit
Okay.
on that. We're still working on getting up to meetings on youth committee, running some logistical issues, with some of our youth being able to attend. We're still working through those issues, but there's some stuff kind of in the works right now as we speak.
Thank you.
How many youth members do we have at this time?
Currently, we have 3 youth members, but we're looking to expand that, and this is kind of part of the process. We're just running some logistical issues with some youth being able to attend.
Thanks.
What's your optimal number?
I'm sorry?
What's the most you want?
I don't know that we have a limit.
So SAG requires us to have a minimum of,
20%.
yeah, so we're well
Okay.
below.
We actually have 4 youth members. Maricela still counts as a youth member.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're right at the minimum. So we have satisfied the SAG requirement, but we are just right there. You're right.
Robin, I will send some sort of written update from me that covers a little bit about the governor's priorities. I recognize we need to do some work around recruitment. I also do want to recognize Jessica Solana, who's over here. Jessica is new on a temporary position with us while Taneja is still healing, but I don't know if folks had a chance to meet or see, if you can see, Jessica here. So in addition to Lawrence, Jessica is relatively new. So just wanted to say that out loud. Thanks for all the work and making all this happen. I can't think of anything else. Raman, to you.
My only ask is, will you just include the links for the Now
Oh, yes.
program in your director update? Okay, awesome.
Yep.
And with that, unless there are any other questions, doing a quick scan of the room. One more scan for my introvert. Okay. Thank you everyone so much for your time, commitment, and energy. We're reconvening in June.
June, early June.
June 8th. Be on your calendars. If there are questions that come up, please feel free to let myself, Brian, Melissa know. The executive committee can convene and figure out where it needs to get redistributed to any other committees. But again, you all are fantastic. Great to see you all. Be together in person, actual exchange of energy. Thanks for everyone joining over Zoom. And please take care of yourselves and one another. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Nicely done.